sleeping on the hill.
The weak of will,
The strong of heart.
All are sleeping, sleeping on the hill. Where are Edith, Kate, May, and Leslie?
All are sleeping, sleeping on the hill.
The proud,
The loud.
the happy one,
All are sleeping, sleeping on the hill. All are sleeping, sleeping, sleeping on the hill.
In life, I was the town drunkard. When I died, the priest denied me burial in holy ground, to which redounded to my good fortune, for the Protestants bought this lot, buried my body here, close to the grave of the banker Nicholas and his wife Priscilla. Take note, ye prudent and pious souls, of the cross currents in life that give honor to the dead who lived in shame.
Henry got me with child, knowing that I could not bring forth life without losing my own. In my youth, therefore, I entered the portals of dust. Traveler, it is believed in the village where I live that Henry loved me with a husband's love, but I proclaim from the dust that he slew me to gratify his hatred.
How does it happen? Tell me. That I, who was most erudite of lawyers, who knew Blackstone and Coke, almost by heart, who made the greatest speech the courthouse ever heard, and wrote a brief that won the praise of Justice Breeze. How does it happen, tell me, that I lie here, unmarked, forgotten, while Chase Henry, the town drunkard, has a marble block topped by an urn, wherein nature, in a mood ironical, has sown a flowering weed.
Take note, passers-by, the sharp erosions eaten into my headstone by the wind and rain, almost as if an intangible nemesis or hatred were marking scores against me. To destroy, not preserve, my memory. I, in life, was the circuit judge, marker of notches, decided in cases on the points the lawyers scored, not on the right of the matter. Oh, wind and rain, leave my headstone alone. For worse than the anger of the wrong, cursed the poor, still I, speechless, yet with vision clear, seeing that even hot put, the murderer hanged by my sentence is innocent in soul compared to me.
Have you ever heard of Editor Wheaton giving anything to the public treasury of the money that he received for supporting candidates for office? Or for writing up the canning factory to get people to invest? Or for suppressing the facts about the bank when it was rotten and ready to break? And did you ever hear of the circuit judge helping anyone except the Q Railroad and the bankers? And did Reverend Pete, Reverend Sibley, ever give any part of their salary, earned by keeping still or speaking out as the leaders wished them to do, about the building of the waterworks? But I, Daisy Fraser, who always walked along the city streets through rows of nods and smiles and words like, "There she goes," never was taken before Judge Justice Arnett without contributing $10 and costs to the school fund of Spoon River.
My parents thought that I would be as great as Edison or greater. For as a boy, I made balloons and wondrous kites and toys with clocks and little engines with tracks to run on and telephones of cans and thread. I played the cornet and painted pictures, modeled in clay, and took the part of the villain in the Octoroom. But then at 21, I married, and I had to live. And so to live, I learned the trade of making watches. I kept a jewelry store on the square, thinking, not of business, but of the engine I studied the calculus to build. And all Spoon River watched and waited to see it work. But it never worked. And a few kind souls believed my genius was somehow hampered by the store. It wasn't true. The truth was this: I didn't have the brains.
I belonged to the church and to the party of prohibition. And the villagers thought I had died of eating a watermelon. In truth, I had cirrhosis of the liver. For every noon for 30 years, I slipped behind the prescription partition in Trainer's drugstore and poured a generous drink of spiritus fermentum.
Only the chemist can tell how and what the result of compounding fluids and solids will be. And who can tell how man and woman will react on each other, or what children will result? It was Benjamin Painter and his wife. Goodness in themselves, but really evil towards each other. And there's one, Benjamin was oxygen, his wife was hydrogen, and their son, a devastating fire.
Together in this grave are Benjamin Painter, attorney at law, Big, his dog, constant companion, solace and friend, and down by the gray road, friends and family, men and women, passing one by one out of this life, left me till I was alone. With Big for a partner, bedfellow, a comrade to drink. In the morning of life, I know aspiration and new glory. Then she, who survives me, snared my soul with a snare which bled me to death, till I was strong of will, lay broken and indifferent, living with Big in a room back of a dingy office.
I know that he told that I snared his soul with a snare which bled him to death. And all the men loved him, and most of the women pitied him. But suppose you're really a lady and have delicate taste and loathe the smell of whiskey and onions, and the rhythm of Wordsworth ode runs in your ears as he goes about morning till night, repeating bits of that common thing. Oh, why should the spirit mold be proud? And then suppose you are a woman well endowed, and the only man for whom the law and morality permits you to have the marital relation is the very man who fills you with disgust. Every time you think of it. When you think of it. Every time you see him. That's why I drove him from home to live with his dog in a dingy room back of his office. Under my jawbone is nestled the bony nose of Big. Our story is lost in silence. Goodbye, mad world.
Where is my boy? My boy. The boy that I love the best in all the world. I, the teacher, the old maid, the virgin heart, who made them all my children. Do I know my boy all right? Thinking of him, spirit of flame, active, ever aspiring.
Well, Emily Sparks, your prayers were not wasted. Your love was not all in vain. I owe whatever I was in life to your hope that would not give me up, to your love that still saw me as good. Somehow from that hour I had a new vision. Dear Emily Sparks,
I would have been as great as George Eliot, but for an untoward fate. For look at the photograph of me made by Pennywit. Chin resting on hand, deep set eyes, gray too, and far searching. But there was the old problem. Should it be celibacy, matrimony, or unchastity? Then John Slack, the rich druggist, he wooed me, luring me with promises of leisure to write my novel. So I married him and gave birth to 8 children and had no time to write. It was all over with me anyway when I ran the needle into my hand while washing the baby's things and died from lockjaw, an ironic death.
I was the first fruit in the Battle of Missionary Ridge. When I felt the bullet enter my heart, I wish I'd stayed at home and gone to jail for stealing the hogs of Colonel Trenery. Instead of running away and joining the army, rather 1,000 times the county jail than lie under this marble figure with wings and this granite pedestal bearing the words Pro Patria? What do they mean anyway?
Noel Holheimer ran away to the war.
The day Colonel Trenery swore out a warrant through Justice Arnett for stealing hogs. But that's not the reason he turned a soldier. He caught me running with Lucius Atherton. We quarreled and I told him never again to cross my path. Then he stole the hogs and went to war. Back of every soldier is a woman.
The earth keeps a vibration going there in your heart, and that is you. And if people find out that you can fiddle, well, fiddle you must for the rest of your life. How could I till my 40 acres and not speak of wanting more with a medley of horns and bassoons and piccolos being stirred in my brain by crows and robins and the creak of an old windmill only there? And I never started to plow a day in my life when someone didn't pull up in the road and take me away to a dance or a picnic. I ended with my 40 acres, broken fiddle, broken smile, and 1,000 memories. Not one regret.
Have you seen, walking in the village, a man with downcast eyes and a gnarly face? That is my husband, who with cruelty not to be told, robbed me of my youth and my beauty, until at last, with wrinkles and with yellow teeth, and with broken promises, I sank into my grave. But what thinks you gnaws at my husband's heart? My face of what I was, and the face of what he made me. This is what drives him to the place where I lie. In death, therefore, I am avenged.
She took my strength by minutes. She took my life by hours. She drained me like a fevered moon that saps the spinning world. The days went by like shadows. The minutes wheeled like stars. She took the pity from my heart and make it into smiles, smiles. She was a hunk of sculptor's clay. My secret thoughts were fingers. They ran behind her pensive brow and lined it deep with pain. They set the lips and sagged the cheeks, lined the eyes with sorrow. My soul had entered in the clay, fighting like 7 devils. It was not mine, it was not hers. She held it, but it struggles. Modeled a face she hated, and a face I feared to see. hunted me for life.
I was a peasant girl from Germany, blue-eyed, rosy, happy and strong. And the first place I worked was at the Thomas Green's. One summer day, when she was away, he stole into the kitchen and put his arms right around me and kissed me on my throat. I, turning my head, and neither of us seemed to know what happened. And I cried for what would become of me. And I cried and cried as my secret began to show. One day, Mrs. Green said she understood and would make no trouble for me, and being childless, would adopt it. He had given her a farm to be still. So she hid in the house and sent out rumors as if it were going to happen to her. All went well. The child was born. They were so kind to me.
I was the only child of Francis Harris of Virginia and Thomas Green of Kentucky, of valiant and noble blood both. From my mother, I inherited vivacity, language, charm. From my father, will, determination, logic. All honor to them both for what service I was to the people. Do you remember when I fought the banks in the courthouse ring for pocketing interest on public funds? Do you remember when I fought the leading citizens who would make the poor the pack horses of the taxes? Do you remember when I fought the business people who fought me for those fights? Then, do you remember?
But at political rallies, when sitters-by thought I was crying at the eloquence of Hamilton Green, that was not it. No. I wanted to say, that's my son. That's my son.
I was sick. But more than that, I was mad at the crooked police and the crooked game of life. So I wrote to the chief of police at Peoria. I am here in my girlhood home in Spoon River, gradually wasting away. But come and take me. I killed the son of the merchant prince in Madam Lew's, and the papers that said he killed himself in his home while cleaning a hunting gun lied like the devil to hush up a scandal for the bribe of advertising. In my room, I shot him at Madam Lew's, because he knocked me down when I said that in spite of all the money he had, I'd see my lover that night.
I, born in Weimar, of a mother who is French and a German father, a most earned professor, orphaned at 14 years. Became a dancer known as Russian Sonia, all up and down the boulevards of Paris. Mistress bedtimes of Sunday dukes and of counts, and later of poor artists and of poets. At 40 years passé, I sought New York, and met old Patrick Coomer on the boat, red-faced and hale, though just turned his 60th year. Returning after having sold a shipload of cattle in the German city of Hamburg, he brought me to Spoon River, and we lived there for 20 years. They thought that we were married. This oak tree here is my favorite haunt, of blue jays chattering all day
When my mustache curled and my hair was black and I wore tight trousers and a diamond stud, I was an excellent knave of hearts and took many trick. But when the gray hairs began to appear, lo, a new generation of girls laughed at me, not fearing me, and I had no more exciting adventures, wherein I was all but shot as a heartless devil. Only drabby affairs, warmed over affairs of the days and of men. As time went on, and I lived at Meyers' restaurant, partaking of short orders, but a gray, untidy, toothless, discarded, rural Don Juan. But there is a message here. Dante, who speaks of one named Beatrice, now I see that the force that made him great drove me to the dregs of life.
I was Roach's servant, selling shoes and gingham, flour and bacon, overalls, clothes, all day long, for 14 hours a day for 313 days, for more than 20 years, saying yes, and yes, sir, and thank you, 1,000 times a day, and all for $50 a month, living in a stinking room in a rattle-trap commercial, and compelled to go to Sunday school and listen to the Reverend Abner Pete 104 times a year for more than an hour at a time, because Thomas Rose ran the church, as well as the store and the bank. So while I was tying my necktie that morning, I suddenly saw myself in the glass, my hair all gray, my face like a sodden pie. So I cursed and I cursed. You damned old thing! You cowardly dog! You rotten pauper! You Rhodes servant! Till Roger Bangham thought I was having a fight with someone and looked through the transom just in time to see me fall to the floor in a heap from a broken vein in my head.
There is something about death, like love itself.
You also,
after years of life together,
feel the sinking of the fire,
and thus fade away together, gradually,
faintly, as it were in each other's arms.
passing through the familiar room. That is a power between souls, like love itself.
How many times during the 20 years I was your leader did you neglect the conference and caucus, leaving the burden on my hands of saving and guarding the people's causes? Sometimes because you were ill, or your grandmother was ill, or because you drank too much and fell asleep. Or maybe you said, "He is our leader, all will be well. He'll fight for us. We have nothing to do but follow." But how you cursed me when I fell, and cursed me by saying that I had betrayed you. When the people's enemies there assembled
waited and watched for a chance to destroy the sacred rights of the people? You common rabble. I left the caucus to go to the urinal.
Mr. Kessler, was in the army and stood on the corner talking politics or sat at home reading Grant's memoirs. And I supported the family by washing, learning the secrets of all of the people, from their curtains, counterpart shirts and skirts, for things that are new grow old at length, to be replaced by better or none at all. People are prospering or falling back, and rents and patches widen with time. No thread or needle can paste decay. And there are stains that baffle soap, and there are colors that run in spite of you, blamed though you are for ruining a dress. Handkerchiefs, napery, have their secrets. The laundress, life, knows all about it. And I, who attended all of the funerals held in Spoon River, swear I never saw a dead face without thinking it looked like something washed and ironed.
Well, don't you see? This is the way of it. We bought the farm with what we inherited, and then his brothers and sisters accused him of poisoning his father's mind against the rest of us. We never had any peace with our little treasure. The marine took the cattle, the crops failed, lightning struck the granary. So we mortgaged the farm to keep going. And he grew silent. He was worried all of the time. And then some of the neighbors, they decided they refused not to speak to us. And they took sides with his brothers and his sisters. And I had no place to turn. As one may say to himself at an earlier time in life, "Oh, no matter, so-and-so is my friend," or "I can fix this with a little trip to Decatur." Then the dreadfulest smells infested the bedrooms. So I set fire to the beds, and the old witch house went up in a roar of flames as I danced in the yard with my arms. And he wept like a freezing steer.
I have studied many times the marble which was chiseled for me. A boat with a furled sail, at rest in a harbor. In truth, it pictures not my destination, but my life. For love was offered me, and I shrank from it, its disillusionment. Sorrow knocked at my door, but I was afraid. Ambition called to me, but I dreaded the chances. Yet all the while, I hungered for meaning in my life. And now I know that we must lift the sail and catch the winds of destiny wherever they drive the boat. To put meaning in one's life may end in madness, but life without meaning is torture of restlessness and vague desire. It is a boat longing for the sea and yet afraid.
And I cheered that flag. I cheered it. We all did. And I cheered the words he spoke as he waved it. And I defied my father and went to war. And then the day I saw the flag raised over our camp in Manila, in a rice field. I cheered it there too. We all cheered it. But there were bugs and poisonous things, and the cruel heat, and the deadly water, and the stench from the place out back where the soldiers went to empty themselves. It was just a place of indignation and bullying and degradation. Until the hour of the march came, and we saw our way clear to march through that awful swamp again, following the flag, until I fell with a cry, shot through the guts. And now in Spoon River, there's a flag over me. A flag. A flag.
She loved me. Oh, how she loved me. I never had a chance to escape from the day she first saw me. But after we were married, I thought she might prove her mortality and let me go. Or she might divorce me. But few die and none resign. And then I ran away for a year and was gone on a lark. But she never complained. She said all would be well, that I would return. And I did return. I told her that while I was taking a row in a boat over by Van Buren Street, I was captured by pirates on Lake Michigan and held in chains, so I could not write her. She cried and kissed me and said, oh, it was so cruel and outrageous and inhuman. I then decided that our marriage was a divine dispensation and could not be dissolved, except by death. I was right.
He left me. He ran away and left me for a year. And when he came back, he told me the silly story of being kidnapped by pirates on Lake Michigan. And he was kept in chains, so he could not write me. I pretended to believe it, though I knew full well what he was doing, and that he met with the milliner, Mrs. Williams, now and then, when she went to the city to buy goods, as she said. But a promise is a promise, and marriage is marriage. And out of respect for my own character, I refuse to be drawn into a divorce by a scheme of a husband who is merely lost interest in his marital vow and duty.
I wrote him a letter asking him, for old time's sake, to discharge my sick boy from the army. But maybe he couldn't read it. Then I went to town and had James Garber, who wrote beautifully, write him a letter, but maybe that was lost in the mails. So I traveled all the way to Washington. I was more than an hour finding the White House, and when I found it, they turned me away, hiding their smiles. Then I thought, oh well, maybe he ain't the same as when I boarded him, and he and my husband worked together, and all of us called him Abe back in Menard. As a last attempt, I turned to a guard and said, please, say it's old Aunt Hannah Armstrong from Illinois. Come to see him about her sick boy in the army. Well, just in a moment, they let me in. And when he saw me, he broke in a laugh and dropped his business as president and wrote in his own hand Doug's discharge, talking the while of the early days and telling stories.
Suppose you stood just 5'2", worked your way as a grocery clerk, studying law by candlelight, until you became an attorney at law. And then suppose, through diligence and regular church attendance, you became attorney for Thomas Rhodes, collecting notes and mortgages, representing all the widows in the probate court. Through it all, they sneered at your size, laughed at your clothes and your polished boots. And then suppose you became the county judge. Jefferson Howard, Kinsley Keene, Harmon Whitney, all the giants who sneered at you were forced to stand before the bar and say, "Your Honor, well, don't you think it was only natural that I made it hard for them?"
As to democracy, fellow citizens, are you not prepared to admit that I, having inherited riches and to the manor born, was second to none in Spoon River in my devotion to the cause of liberty, while my contemporary, Anthony Findlay, born in a shanty, starting life as a water carrier to the section hands, then becoming a section hand himself as he was grown, rising to foreman of the gang, and eventually administrator of the railroad, living in Chicago, was a veritable slave driver, grinding the faces of labor, and a bitter enemy to democracy. And I say to you, Spoon River, and to you, O Republic, beware the man who rises to power on one suspender.
At 4 o'clock in late October, I sat alone in the country schoolhouse, back from the roads amid stricken fields. An eddy of wind blew the leaves on the pane, and crooned in the flue of the cannon stove, its open mouth blurring the shadows from the spectral glow of the dying fire. In an idle mood, I was running the planchette, when all at once my wrist grew limp. My hand moved rapidly across the board until the name Charles Guiteau was spelled, who threatened to materialize right in front of my eyes. I rose and fled from the room, bareheaded into the dusk, afraid of my gift. After that, the spirits swarmed. Chaucer, Caesar, Poe and Marlowe, Cleopatra, and Mrs. Surratt. Wherever I went, with messages.
Almost a shell of a woman after the surgeon's life, and almost a year to creep back into strength. Till the dawn of our wedding decennial found myself, my seeming self again. We walked the forest together, along a path of silent moss and turf. But I could not look into your eyes, and you could not look into my eyes. For such sorrow was ours. The graying of your hair, I, but a shell for myself. And what did we talk of? Earth and water, anything most to hide our thoughts. And then your gift of wild roses, set to grace our table over dinner. Poor heart, how bravely you struggled to imagine and to live remembered rapture. Then my spirit drooped as the night came on, and you left me alone for a while, just as when I was a bride. Poor heart. And as I was looking into the mirror, something said, one who is all dead should not be half dead, nor ever mock life, nor ever cheat love.
Ye, young debaters of the doctrine of the soul's immortality, I who lay here was the village atheist, talkative, contentious, versed in the arguments of the infidels, but through a long sickness, coughing myself to death. I read the Upanishads and the poetry of Jesus, and that light lit a torch of hope and intuition and desire, which the shadow leading me swiftly through the caverns of darkness could not extinguish. Listen to me, ye who live through the senses and think through the senses only. Immortality is not a gift. Immortality is an achievement. Only those who strive mightily shall possess it.
Your red blossoms amid green leaves are drooping, beautiful geranium. But you do not ask for water. You cannot speak. You do not need to speak. Everyone knows that you are dying of thirst. Yet they do not bring water. They pass on saying, the geranium wants water. And I, who had happiness to share, and longed to share your happiness, I, who loved you, Spoon River, and craved your love, withered before your eyes, thirsting, thirsting, voiceless from the chasteness of soul to ask for your love. You who knew and saw me perish before you, just like this geranium, which someone has planted over me and left to die.
If I could have lived another year, I could have finished my flying machine and become rich and famous. Hence, it is fitting that the workman who tried to chisel a dove for me made it look more like a chicken. Chicken. For what is it all but being hatched and running about the yard till the day of the block? Save that a man has an angel's brain and sees the axe from the first.
In my youth, my wings were strong and tireless, but I did not know the mountains. In age, I knew the mountains, but my wings could not follow my vision. Genius is wisdom, vision, and youth.
Here lies the body of Lois Spears, born Lois Fluke, daughter of Willard Fluke, wife of Cyrus Spears, mother of Myrtle and Virgil Spears, children of clear eyes and sound limbs. I was born blind. I was the happiest of women, as wife, mother, and housekeeper, caring for my loved ones, and making my home a place of order and bounteous hospitality. For I went about the rooms and about the garden with an instinct as sure as sight, as though there were eyes in my fingertips. Glory to God in the highest.
I bought every type of machine that's known. Grinders, shellers, planters, mowers, mills and rakes, and plows and threshers. And all of them stood in the rain and sun, getting rusted, warped, and battered. For I had no sheds to store them in, and no use for most of them. And toward the last, when I thought it over, there by my window, as my pulse slowed down, and looked at one of the mills I bought, which I didn't have the slightest need of, and never ran, as things turned out. A fine machine, once brightly varnished, and eager to do its work, now with its paint washed off. I saw myself as a good machine that life has never used.
Here I lie, close to the grave of old Bill Pearsall, who grew rich trading with the Indians, and who afterwards took the bankrupt laws and emerged richer than ever. Myself, grown tired of toil and poverty, and beholding how old Bill Pearsall and others grew in wealth, robbed a traveler one night, killing him unwittingly while doing so. That was my way of going into bankruptcy. Now he who took the bankrupt laws in our respective way sleep peacefully side by side.
Nothing in life is alien to you. I was a penniless girl from Summer who stepped from morning train in Spoon River. All the houses stood before me with closed doors and drawn shades. I was barred out. I had no part in any of them. And I walked past the old McNeely mansion with its gardens and stone and walks, a castle with workmen about the place on guard, and the county and state upholding it for its lordly owner full of pride. I was so hungry, I had a vision. I saw a giant pair of scissors dip from the sky like the beam of a dredge and cut the house in two like a curtain. But at the commercial, I saw a man who winked at me as I asked for work. It was Wash McNeely's son. He proved the link in the chain of title that led to my ownership of half the mansion through a breach of promise suit, the scissors. So you see, the house, from the day I was born, was only waiting for me.
was moonlight, and the earth sparkled from the new fallen frost. And it was midnight, and not a soul was abroad. From the chimney of the courthouse, a great hound of smoke leapt and chased the northwest wind. I carried a ladder over to the landing of the stairs and leaned it against the frame of the trapdoor in the ceiling of the portico. Then I crawled under the roof and through the rafters and into the seasoned timbers. I flung a lighted handful of oil-soaked waste. In a little while, the fire bells began to ring, clang, 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 and the Spoon River Ladder Company came with a dozen buckets and began to pour water on the glorious bonfire. As it got hotter and hotter, higher and higher the flames went, until the walls fell in. The limestone columns where Lincoln stood, they crashed like trees when the woodsman felled them. When I got out of Joliet prison, there was a new courthouse with a dome. You see, I was punished like all those who destroy the past for the sake of the future.
You wouldn't believe me, would you? That I came from good, well stock. Purer blooded than the white trash here. And of more direct lineage than the Virginians and the New Englanders of Spoon River. No, you wouldn't believe that I had been to school, had read some books. You saw me as a broken down old man with matted hair and beard and ragged clothes. Sometimes a man's life turns into a cancer. From being bruised and continually bruised, it grows into a great purplish mass, like growths on a stalk of corn. Here I was, a carpenter, who had wandered into a bog of life. I thought it was a meadow, with a slattern for a wife, and poor Minerva, my daughter, who you tormented and drove to her death. So I crept like a snail through the days of my life. No longer do you hear my footsteps in the morning, resounding on the hollow sidewalk, going to the grocery for a little bit of cornmeal or a nickel's worth of bacon.
Minerva, the village poetess, hooted at and jeered at by the yahoos in the village. And all the more when Butch Welby captured me in a brutal hunt. He left me to my fate with Dr. Meyers. And I sank into my death, growing numb from my feet up, like on stepping on on a stream into an ice. Will someone please go to the village newspaper and gather the verses that I wrote? I thirsted for love, and I hungered for life.
No other man, unless it was Doc Hill, did more for the people in this town than I did. And the weak, the halt, the improvident, and all those that could not pay, they all flocked to me. The good-natured, easy Dr. Meyers. I was in good health, happy, in comfortable fortune, blessed with a congenial mate, children raised, all married, doing well in the world. And then one night, Minerva, the poetess, comes to me in her troubles crying. I try to help her out. She died. They indicted me. The newspapers disparaged me, disgraced me. My wife perished of a broken heart, and pneumonia finished me.
He protested all his life long. The newspapers lied about him villainously, that he was not at fault for Minerva's fall, but only tried to help her. Poor soul, so sunk in sin, he could not see that in trying to help her, as he called it, he had broken the law, human and divine. Passers-by, an ancient admonition to you. If your ways would be ways of pleasantness, and all your pathways peace, love God and keep his commandments.
I was Willie Metcalf. They used to call me Dr. Meyers because they said I looked like him. And he was my father, according to Jack McGuire. I lived in the livery stable, sleeping on the floor with Roger Bowman's bulldog, or sometimes in a stall. I used to crawl between the legs of the wildest horses and not get kicked. We knew each other. On spring days, I tramped through the country to get that feeling that I sometimes lost, that I was not a separate thing from the earth. I used to lose myself, as if in sleep, by lying with my eyes half open in the woods. Sometimes I talked with the animals, even toads and snakes, anything with an eye to look into. Once I saw a stone in the sunshine trying to turn into jelly. In April days in the cemetery, the dead gathered all about me and grew still like a congregation in silent prayer. I never knew if I was part of the earth, with flowers growing in me, or whether I walked. Now I know.
From Mindle's Opera House in the village to Broadway is a great step, but I tried to take it. My ambition fired when 16 years of age, seeing East Lynne right here in the village by Ralph Barrett, the coming romantic actor who enthralled my soul. True, I trailed home a troubled failure, when Ralph disappeared in New York, leaving me alone in the city. But life broke him also. In this great place of silence, there are no kindred spirits.
My name used to be in the papers daily, of having dined somewhere, or traveled somewhere, or rented a house in Paris, where I entertained nobility. Or taking the bath at Baden-Baden. Now I'm here to do honor to Spoon River, here beside my ancestors from whom I sprang. No one cares anymore where I dined or traveled or whom I entertained or how often I took the cure at Baden-Baden.
I went to the dances at Chandlerville and played snap out at Winchester. One time we changed partners, driving home in the moonlight of mid-June, and then I found Davis. We were married and lived together for 70 years, enjoying, working, raising the 12 children, 8 of whom we lost ere I had reached the age of 60. I spun, I wove, I kept the house, I nursed the sick, I made the garden, and for holiday, rambled over the fields where sang the larks, or by Spoon River, gathering many a shell, many a flower and medicinal herb, shouting to the wooded hills, singing to the green valleys. At 96, I had lived enough, that is all, and passed to a sweet repose. What is this I hear of sorrow and weariness, anger, discontent, and drooping hopes? Ha! Degenerate sons and daughters, life is too strong for you. It takes life to love life.
And I say to you, life is like a gambler, head and shoulders above us all. No mayor alive can close that house. And if you lose, you can squeal as you will. You'll not get back your money. He makes the percentage hard to conquer. He stacks the cards to catch your weakness and not meet your strength, and to give you 70 years to play. For if you cannot win in 70, you cannot win at all. So, if you lose, get out of the room. Get out of the room when your time is up. It's mean to sit and fumble through the cards and curse your losses, lead at night, whining, to try and try.
The secret of the stars, gravitation. The secret of the earth, layers of rock. The secret of the soil, to receive seed. The secret of the seed, the germ. The secret of man, the sower. The secret of woman, the soil. My secret? Under a mound you shall never find.
Out of my unworthy and unknown, the vibrations of deathless music, with malice toward none, with charity for all. Out of me, the forgiveness of millions toward millions, and the beneficent face of a nation shining with justice and truth. I am Anne Rutledge, who lie here beneath these weeds, beloved in life of Abraham Lincoln, wedded to him, though not through union, but through separation. Bloom forever, O Republic, from the dust of my bosom.
Good friends, let's go to the fields. I have a fever. After I take a little walk, and by your pardon, I think I'll sleep. There is nothing more sweeter, not faith more blessed than sleep. Here, world, I pass you like an orange to a child. I can no more